Hey guys, welcome back. I know I don't usually make guide videos outside of my occasional top 5 or something of that variety, but with Genshin Impact having upwards of 80 units at this point, team building has become fairly congested, especially for new players who don't have the years of pre-existing knowledge that long-time players do. While it's of course important to have an in-depth breakdown on everything about a character, and I highly recommend you check out those full guides, notably the ones from my good friends Iwantoluz, Gachagamer, and Sevi, I'm sure it would be convenient to have a one-stop shop, especially if you have a ton of units you're working on and just want a quick rundown of who to pair them with. So as a change of pace, that's what I want to do for today. I'm gonna be going through every single 5-star character and give you their best team or teams if they have two formations that are practically equal in strength. I should point out that best can be subjective and doesn't take into account edge cases like what if they're up against this or that enemy. The point of this video is a general framework on what they want. Some units are characterized by having an assortment of teams at work. Secondly, these teams will also be graded in a vacuum. One character's best team may not equate in strength to another character's best team. Also, there will be times where I echo the same team for two different characters, which may prompt some of you to ask, wait, earlier you said X character for that team, now you're saying Y? It's important to remember that a character's best team is not the other 3 party members' best team. X character might depend on Y, but Y character might not necessarily depend on X. It's not always reciprocal. Finally, in light of there being 50-something 5-stars, I'm gonna be going kind of fast. Like I said, if you want more detailed info or nuances, definitely recommend checking out their full guides. But rest assured, this will be sufficient in terms of giving you a quick idea of who to pair your characters up with if, say, you want to try something different for a Spiral Abyss cycle or two. Also, if one of you kind viewers can make a timestamp list in the comments down below, that would be appreciated. I'm kind of too lazy to do it myself. Anyways, let's begin. We're gonna go in chronological order, starting in version 1.0 and ending at the current version. First and foremost being Diluc. Diluc's current best team is without a doubt the plunging attack Genshin with the help of Shenhe. Possessing the highest base plunging attack damage to this day, it's a pretty good lineup all things considered. So it will be Diluc, Shenhe, and the remaining two will be Furina and Bennett. Those two offer the highest raw damage boost for him, as all he needs in this scenario is tons of attack and tons of damage. For Jean, being a support character, there's no set of combination of 4 units that can be defined as her best, rather her purpose in a team matters more. With that said, her primary niche is to facilitate Furina and arguably the best use of her too, meaning Jean's best team would entail Furina, Neuvillette, and Yelan if I had to guess. I should point out that choosing an optimal team for a support character is more ambiguous terrain than DPS units, for the simple fact that they're designed to work for multiple teams, just keep that in mind. Keqing, the OG waifu, her best team is without question Aggravate, paired alongside Yelan and Fischl with your choice of Dendro being Nahida for obvious reasons. In my opinion, Yelan is a better booster for Keqing than Kazuha, even though Kazuha's grouping ability and personal damage are factors you should most certainly not ignore. I'm just partial to having a healer because it's always appreciated, and if you do have C2 Yelan, Keqing can spam a burst every 3 seconds or something. However, you could also go Kazuha and Baizhu instead of Nahida and Yelan. Mona's best team, I'm gonna say Freeze. That's kind of the role she's been stuck into ever since her original purpose of being a screen nuke ran its course. In that regard, her best team will entail Ayaka or Ganyu, then Shenhe, and then Venti. If you're pressed for a healer, you can swap out Shenhe for Diona, but keep in mind you're losing a ton of DPS to allow for that. Qiqi, really? Why? Fine, if I had to choose one team that you could probably get away with, I would put her on a Bridge team or Hyperboom, something like Nahida, Furina, and Itto, or replace Itto with an Electro or something. Honestly, I have nothing but the utmost respect for anyone who dares to think Qiqi can be viable. On the other hand, Klee, definitely an underrated character. For Klee, I was torn between Mono Pyro or Forward Vaporize because they're both pretty good, but if I had to choose, I think Klee has a penchant for arson. So we'll do Klee, Bennett, Xiangling, and Kazuha. Very simple team. Just burn everything to all hell. Alice will be proud. That said, I believe Forward Vaporize is just Mono Pyro but swapping a Xiangling with Furina, so it's really pick your poison. Mr. Tartaggles, aka Childe. Say it with me, class. Childe International. Nothing that hasn't been established before. Childe, Bennett, Xiangling, and Kazuha, literally the same formation as Klee but replaced with Childe. At the time of writing this, I'm not certain if Yelan works better than Kazuha in this formation, or if grouping's a bigger priority given we have Bennett for healing, but I think any team involving Kazuha can easily switch in Yelan or vice versa depending on what you care more to have. However, Kazuha's grouping makes chaining Riptide a lot more forgiving, so it might just be him for this team. Chiu Daddy Zhongli. See this guy doesn't have a best team, he's just kind of thrown into whatever team that can afford to have him. Arguably his most popular option would be Hu Tao Double Hydro if the funeral director doesn't want to go Pogo Stick. A good second would be Zhongli for Neuvillette teams at C0. Everyone seems to be in agreement that Zhongli is designed for any and every team who can flex a forward party slot. He'll take a loss in DPS compared to more offensive-oriented units like Kazuha, Yelan, etc., but I think those two teams make the best use of him. Albedo has been dealt a bad hand in life, never really being the best option for anything, and having gotten power crept out of every role he could be filled in. But if you are adamant about using him, then your choice is probably Mono Geo as a 3rd Geo character for Itto and Goro. Ganyu's had a niche role in melt teams given her level 2 aim shots do some pretty solid burst damage, but I still think she's a freeze driver through and through. Ganyu, Shenhe, Kazuha, or Venti based on how much grouping you need, and then a Hydro character. I usually bring Kokomi because healer, but given you're perma-freezing everyone anyway, you really don't need sustain. You can bring Mona and one-shot everyone, problem solved. But if you do want to go melt, Bennett and Xiaolin, like who the hell else is it gonna be? Fourth character can be Xiaonin, who's a lot easier to support that kind of team than Kazuha since you don't care for application. Xiao's best team can be rather prohibitively expensive, but the payoff is more than worth it. Ever since the release of Xianyun, he's become one of the best attackers in the game with the right investment. For that, you'll need himself, Farazan, C6 Farazan to be exact, Furina, and Xianyun. Bungee jump on everything until they die. It gets addictive after a while, not gonna lie. Speaking of bungee jumping, we have Hu Tao, with the exact same playstyle as the short kid. Only instead of Farazan, you bring in Yelan, so the team would be herself, Yelan, Furina, and Xianyun. Basically the same principle, just make sure you throw in a normal attack in between jumps to get Yelan's follow-up attack off. I will say however that Hu Tao, Xiaonin, Furina, and Yelan might actually be stronger. The DPS boost offered by Xiaonin is comparable if not slightly better than Xianyun for Hu Tao, making it a worst day side grade. Applicably, Pogo Stick Hu Tao definitely wins in AoE, but Xiaonin Hu Tao wins in single target. Eula, poor thing. Eula's best team right now would consist of herself, Raiden Shogun, Furina, and then another crowd unit. You need a healer for Furina, so I would say Mika. As much damage as you can put on her and pray to Lord RNGesus that you get a crit. They really need to give her a physical Farazan. Kadehara Kazuha. Kazuha is a jack of all trades support. As such, he's designed to work with practically anything and everything. Naturally, it's hard to pinpoint a single best team for him. You can play him in Vaporize, Taser, Freeze, Burgeon, Quick, and what have you. So I'm actually not going to give him a best team for the simple fact that he has too many teams. Honestly, anything with Electro, Pyro, Cryo, or Hydro, Kazuha can be used. Ayaka is all about freeze. You want to pair her with Shenhe, a Hydro unit, and Dynamo unit. If you're confident you don't need a sustain, you go Mona and Venti or Mona and Kazuha. If you are concerned about sustain, which I don't blame you with how freeze immune everything is, then you can use Kokomi in place of Mona. A very solid team, assuming you can actually freeze your target. Yoimiya's highest DPS team technically would be some combination of herself, Bennett, Furina, and Xiaonin, but I feel like you're never going to be able to get that off consistently given the absence of a shield, so instead, I'll go with her standard, Yoimiya, Yelan, and Zhongli, and then you can either go Xingqiu or Yunjin. Yunjin offers a bit more offensive utility with her attack speed and normal attack boost, while Xingqiu offers more defensive utility, but if you're going Zhongli, then you're not exactly short on defense, so overall Yunjin might be better. Raiden Shogun's best team is... You know what? I actually don't think it's Raiden National anymore. I mean, if you want to go Raiden National, then by all means, it's not like it's going anywhere. But I think at C0, Shogun's best role would be as a sub-DPS in Hyper Bloom teams, as their elemental skills one of the most consistent tools for that kind of team. Say you were to have her at C2, or preferably C2R1, then may I suggest a Hyper Carry team instead, featuring herself, Furina, Xiaonin, and Bennett, or C6 Kujo Sada. I know she's not too bad in overload teams with Chevreuse, although I would still put my money on the aforementioned options. Like other supports, Kokomi is designed to be used with all manner of teams that need Hydro. You can use her in Bloom teams, Taser, Freeze, what have you, so it's hard to pick out what her best team is. That being said, I think right now her best offensive output would be Bloom teams, Nilou Bloom in particular, so it would be Nahida, Nilou obviously, and then likely a second Dendro character like maybe Klee or Baizhu. But realistically, you can use Kokomi for any team that needs Hydro and or Sustain. Funnily enough, I believe supports have power crept to the point where Itto's best team doesn't even use Mono Geo anymore. Like you just go him, Xiaonin, Furina, and then usually Yelan for the extra damage and to give Furina more energy to work with. C2 Xiaonin could work for Mono Geo teams, but you won't be able to bring Furina to round that party out given Xiaonin doesn't heal in Triple Geo comps. Shenhe, when in the world are you getting a rerun? Well, for those that do have her, she's practically joined at the hip to Ayaka, Ganyu, and Wriothesley, no exceptions. If you intend to play any of them, you can expect to play her. That being said, because Ganyu and Wriothesley have the option to do Melt, Ayaka is really the only one where Shenhe is obligatory. Yae Miko is a pretty solid off-field attacker for anything electro-based. If I had to guess, her best team would be Quiqi, Official, or Shinobu in tow. So I would go for Alhaitham, Miko, Shinobu, and Nahida. A mixture of Spread and Aggravate put together, although I do know people advocate for Miko, Official, Kazuha, and Baizhu. Taser is alright, but Taser in general doesn't quite hit as hard as Quiqi does point for point. Despite being a carry, quote-unquote, Ayato has almost comparable team versatility to supports, being used in virtually every single team you can think of that entails Hydro. As such, I have no idea what the hell his best team is. I have half a mind to put him on Hyper Bloom or Nilou Bloom because Dendro is just stupid broken, in which case it would be him, Nahida, Official, and Shinobu, or him, Nilou, Nahida, and Baizhu. Really, you can use him for anything, that's kind of his whole shtick. Yelan, on the other hand, is a bit more specialized. Currently, her best attacker would be Hu Tao, despite being usable for multiple units. In light of that, I'm gonna put her with Hu Tao as her definitive highest damage team. So it would be Hu Tao, Furina, Yelan, and either Xiaonin or Xianyun depending on playstyle. That said, Quick Bloom's a close second. You can find a ton of success with her alongside Qingqiu and Shinobu for Alhaitham, a fantastic unit through and through. Tighnari is primarily a Quicken-based character, pairing alongside Vishal for an equal combination of spread and aggravate. Your best team would be him, Zhongli, Vishal, and some other Dendro unit like Nahida, relying on quick swaps to attack. Alternatively, you can substitute Zhongli for Baizhu and Nahida for maybe more Electro like Yae Miko and tap 2 Dendro to Electro, not a bad strategy either. Cyno's best team is a tricky one because it comes off ever so slightly unintuitive. Essentially, you want to build a mixture of reaction and hypercarry DPS on him, going himself, Nahida, Furina, and Baizhu. A very expensive team to build, but it is one that rewards you fairly well if you're willing to go the distance on him. I still feel bad for the guy with how much he got screwed over by timing. Arriving at Nilou, her passive makes it very obvious you want only Dendro and Hydro for your team. The rule of thumb is to have 1 Dendro, 3 Hydro, or 2 and 2. For my money, her best team would be herself, Kokomi, Baizhu, and Nahida, using Kokomi as the on-fielder for the team. You could slot in Furina for this team, but the bulk of Bountiful Bloom's DPS is placed on reaction damage, not general damage, so application takes precedence. Kokomi on field has plenty. Nahida, what on God's green earth is your best team? I personally think it's a tie between Nilou Bloom and Alhaitham Hyper Bloom. For Nilou, we established her team 2 seconds ago, and for Alhaitham it's gonna be Nahida, Alhaitham, Shinobu, and Furina. In application, however, Nahida is your coverall option for Dendro. If you're thinking of any team remotely revolving around Dendro, Nahida is either best in slot or tied for best in slot with Baizhu. She's just that good. Wanderer is identical to Xiao in that both of them need C6 Farazan, but unlike Xiao, you play Wanderer like a regular carry. Good options for him would be Bennett and Zhongli. Shields are highly recommended given you don't want to get staggered. Not as obligatory as Yoimiya, but you'd be dealing with heavy consistency issues without it. Alhaitham faces the same issue as Nahida, where literally anything Dendro related he can do. Usually though, any optimal team involving him would feature Nahida. From then on, it's up to you if you want to do Hyper Bloom or Quicken. If doing Hyper Bloom, you can go Furina Shinobu, or if you're going Quicken, you can do Yae Miko Shinobu. Basically the same thing, just Miko or Furina. Realistically though, you can use Furina, Qingqiu, or Yelan, whichever you prefer. Dehya. You know what? Actually, she doesn't do too bad with either the 2 Natlan DPS units we have. For Milani, she does a decent job setting up for Vaporize, and for Kanish, she's a good Virgin candidate. It's a very unique set of utility that Dehya has that can surprisingly work well with those characters. For Baiju's best team, I'm actually gonna say Cyno, the aforementioned Cyno, Nahida, and Furina. That's arguably his best team, but he's a specific type of support. Alternatively, he's a good choice for Nilou Bloom as you don't have that many other shielding options. You can do what I said earlier with Baizhu, Nahida, Ayato, and Nilou. One more thing you can do is you can also use him for Neuvillette. So Neuvillette, Furina, Kazuha, and Baizhu, because team-wide heals for Furina and some shielding for Neuvillette. On to Lyney. Lyney's a mono pyro boy. Give him Bennett and Shenhe, then Shilonen or Kazuha, whichever you need more of. Grouping or healing and a bit of stagger protection as you want. Doesn't get much more complicated than that. However, I've also been made aware that you could go Lyney Overload with Chevreuse and mono pyro. As a more single target oriented team, you can also go Lyney with Furina, and you can still maintain the pyro because Furina's application is not that much, but I think in a general sense it's good to go mono pyro. The man, the myth, the sea otter. Neuvillette's best team is solo Neuvillette because he's just him. Kidding, I'm kidding. His best team would be himself, Furina, Shilonen, and Kazuha, one of the few teams where you could actually make use of both at the same time. This might be arguably the best team in the entire game overall in regards to how brainless it is. Of the 3 cryo units, Wriothesley's the most comfortable running a melt setup, I would say. In which case you want to go him, Shilonen, Furina, and Zhongli. But if the enemy can be frozen, then you want to go himself, Shenhe, Qingqiu, and Yelan for max DPS. Or you can swap a Shenhe for Bennett if you need to stay alive. Either option's okay. Furina's best team would inarguably be Neuvillette. They're just too good together. I mean, granted, Furina's intended to be good with a lot of people, but Neuvillette's choice number 1. So that would be the aforementioned Neuvillette, Furina, Kazuha, and Shilonen. If I had to choose a close second, it would be any variant of Plunge with Shenhe. For Navia, currently her go-to would be herself, Bennett, Zhongli, and Shilonen. You could probably swap a Zhongli with Furina to get a bit more power in there. In any case, make sure you have Shilonen and 2 non-Geo members in there to get the full power of Navia's talent. Shenhe's best team is 100% Xiao. She works nicely with Hu Tao and Diluc, but among the 3, I think Xiao takes the cake. Shenhe, Furina, Xiao, and Farazan would be her strongest choice. That being said, Pogo Stick Hu Tao is probably the more popular of the 2 considering more people use her than Xiao, but I gotta give it to the shorty. Chiode's current best team would be Mono Geo or Navia with C1. Mono Geo being with Itto and Goro, and Navia being her second Geo. Objectively, Shilonen would be a better second Geo for Navia, but since we're talking about Chiode's best team specifically, at C1 it would be her, Navia, Bennett, and Zhongli. At C0 it would be her, Itto, Goro, and a board character like Zhongli. Arlecchino's a tricky one. She's got a lot of teams, but I'm gonna say her best team is a Vaporize team with Shilonen. Xilonen can heal her, but the shred and boost is more than sufficient. Arlecchino, Xilonen, Bennett, and Yelan would be good. Or if you feel like living life on the edge, you can pull out Xingqiu and play Furina, assuming Furina C2 for easier fanfare. Good luck staying alive though. Cloran's best team is a Quicken team featuring herself and Kazuha or Xilonen, same thing, whatever you prefer. You can also attempt a Quick Bloom team with Furina as a 4th party member slot, but you're mostly taking Furina for the deeps, not actual blooming. Little Siege Win, I think your best option would be Mono Hydro actually, with Yelan and Furina bringing Kazuha or Xilonen for Shred. It's actually not half bad a team. Despite not having the best application, Siege Win makes up for it with great party-wide healing, so a Mono Hydro team with her is surprisingly strong. Emily's best team would bring a tear to Klee's eye. Emily, Kanish, Bennett, and Zhongli burn everything, send all of Spiral Abyss through the fire and flames. This will likely change when Mavuika comes out, but for the time being, Kanish and Emily are basically boyfriend and girlfriend. Milani's best team is a classic forward Vaporize. I actually think her best team might be herself, Xilonen, Zhongli, and then either Nahida or Emily depending on the situation. You might be asking, why not Furina? You could use Furina, but you want to try to avoid any other Hydro character because you don't want them to steal Vaporize. If you want something more defensive, you can trade Zhongli for Dehya, as long as you're okay with taking a DPS scuff for doing so. Take everything I said for Emily and copy that for Kanish. Kanish wants Emily, Bennett, and Zhongli. Very simple premise, burn everything to hell and back. It's a very specific playstyle, so the team is specific too. And finally we have Xilonen. What's her best comp? A simple answer. Yes. Okay, that's every single character. Once again, please don't take this as me saying that's the only team you can use them in. It's just if you're wondering which team does the most damage with that character or which team is the best performing, this video can serve as a reference point. Still though, I recommend you look at more in-depth analyses by my guide friends to make sure you get all the context. I hope this was insightful to those who needed it and entertaining to those who wanted it. If you enjoyed it, it would be great if you gave it a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at VarsFarum, join my Discord server, and check out my other top 5, top 10 Genshin videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.